When you buy a Honda in 2026, you're not purchasing a car, you're purchasing a legacy. You're writing a check for a reputation that was earned by engineers who no longer run the company, built on principles that no longer drive every decision, and sustained by a trust that's starting to crack. The question isn't whether Honda was great. The question is whether that greatness still lives in the metal and machinery you can buy today. Whether the Honda sitting on dealer lots right now deserves the same faith that made the brand untouchable for 3 decades. That's what we're here to figure out, and the answer is more complicated than anyone wants to admit. This is the part that changes the math completely. In 2005, if you wanted a reliable, well-built, fuel-efficient Japanese car, the conversation started and mostly ended with Honda and Toyota. That world is gone. Hyundai and Kia have undergone one of the most dramatic quality transformations in automotive history. 10 years ago, people joked about them. Today, Consumer Reports gives multiple Hyundai and Kia models higher reliability scores than their Honda equivalents. The Tucson, the Sonata, the Kia Telluride, the Sportage, these are genuinely well-built vehicles with longer warranties and, in many cases, lower transaction prices than their Honda counterparts. The Kia Telluride wins more 3-row SUV awards than any other vehicle in the segment. It costs less than a loaded Pilot. Think about that. Mazda has built a reputation for quality interiors, engaging driving dynamics, and reliability that rivals Honda at prices that often undercut them. The CX-50 competes directly with the CR-V. The CX-90 competes with the Pilot. Mazda owners report some of the highest satisfaction scores in the industry. Toyota remains Honda's closest peer, and Toyota is now getting technology to market faster than Honda in some cases. The RAV4 Hybrid is the most practical, most capable, most popular hybrid crossover in America. The Camry Hybrid gets nearly 50 miles per gallon combined. Toyota is not sleeping, and here's the hardest truth for Honda loyalists. The used car market has changed the value equation dramatically. The CR-V's used value holds extremely well because the reputation is strong. But that means you're paying a premium on the used market too. A 3-year-old Tucson with similar mileage costs significantly less and comes from a manufacturer that's been steadily climbing the quality rankings. Honda's reputation is still real, but it no longer represents the kind of gap that justifies paying a premium over the competition. Remember what I said at the beginning. Honda was the smartest car you could buy. Not because of the badge, because of the engineering principle behind the badge. Man maximum, machine minimum. Build the engine right. Build it so that 10 years later, the car is still doing exactly what it was supposed to do, and the person who bought it feels exactly as smart as they did the day they signed the paperwork. That principle still exists in parts of Honda's lineup. The Accord, the Ridgeline. The reliability of Honda's naturally aspirated engines when they're given the chance to shine. There are still Honda engineers who think the way Soichiro Honda taught them to think, but the company around those engineers has been making decisions that don't reflect that principle. Chasing EV mandates instead of building EVs customers wanted. Pricing on reputation without protecting the reputation with consistent quality. Watching the competition close the gap and raising prices as if the gap were still wide. Here's what Honda needs to do. Go back to the obsession. Not the year, not the styling, not a nostalgia campaign. The obsession. Build an engine that nobody else is building. Put it in your volume models first. Make the Civic and the Accord the best engineered cars in their segments again, not just the most trusted by inertia. Fix the transmission problems. Give drivers something that doesn't exist in Honda form. Create separation. Create a reason. Because right now, if someone walks into a Honda dealership with $38,000 to spend, there is no clean argument for why they shouldn't also walk into a Mazda dealership, a Hyundai dealership, a Kia dealership. The answer used to be obvious. Honda is more reliable. Honda lasts longer. Honda holds its value. Honda is the smart choice. In 2026, each one of those statements needs an asterisk, and in the car business, asterisks cost you everything. So should you buy a Honda right now? Here's my honest answer. If the Accord speaks to you, especially the 2.0-liter turbo trim, it's still one of the best mid-size sedans you can buy. Full stop. The Civic hatchback is a genuinely great compact. If you're getting a deal that makes sense on the numbers, Honda still delivers a solid car. But if you're buying a Honda because you assume it's automatically the most reliable, the best value, the smartest choice, please do the homework first. Compare it directly against the Mazda, the Toyota, the Hyundai. Sit in all of them, price out all of them. Look at the actual reliability data for the specific model and engine you're considering. Don't buy a reputation, buy the car. Honda built one of the greatest legacies in automotive history. They built it with honesty, with engineering obsession, with a refusal to compromise on the things that mattered. That legacy deserves to be honored by Honda and by the buyers who love the brand. and the best way to honor it is to hold Honda to the standard they set for themselves. Not the standard of what they used to be, the standard of what they said they stood for, because the day Honda built their first CVCC engine and met emission standards that Ford said were impossible, that wasn't luck, that was a promise. We're just waiting for Honda to make it again. I'd love to know where you land on this. Do you still believe in Honda? Do you own one right now, and you're defending it in the comments, or are you someone who switched away and never looked back? Drop it below. This community has some of the most knowledgeable car people on YouTube, and I read every single comment. If this video gave you something to think about, share it with someone who's shopping for a car right now. You might save them a very expensive mistake or help them make a very confident purchase. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one. Drive smart. To understand what Honda lost, you need to understand what Honda was, and it didn't begin the way most automakers began. Honda didn't start by building cars. They built engines, racing engines. Soichiro Honda, the founder, was obsessed with performance, not comfort, not luxury, not prestige. Pure mechanical performance. His philosophy was brutally simple. If the engine is right, everything else follows. In 1948, Honda Motor Company launched. By 1959, they entered the Isle of Man TT motorcycle race, one of the most brutal motorsport events in the world, and finished 6th. By 1961, they won it outright, a company barely a decade old, beating manufacturers with 50 years of experience. Then they brought that same obsession to automobiles. In 1972, Honda released something that should have been impossible. The CVCC engine, compound vortex controlled combustion, met America's 1975 Clean Air Act emission standards 2 years ahead of schedule, without a catalytic converter. While Ford, GM, and Chrysler were lobbying Congress to delay the regulations because they claimed meeting them was technically impossible, Honda just did it. That's the company we're talking about. Engineers who thought differently. Engineers who found solutions where others found excuses. Then came the engine that changed everything. VTEC, variable valve timing and lift electronic control. Introduced in 1989, the same year Lexus launched the LS400, Honda engineers were quietly making something that would define car culture for a generation. VTEC worked like two engines in one. At low RPM, it ran economically, smoothly, like a commuter car. Then at a certain point, around 50,500 RPM, you felt it. A second cam profile engaged, the engine breathed differently, the sound changed, the car pulled differently. Every kid who ever felt that crossover, every enthusiast who ever revved a B-Series in a parking lot, every driver who ever pushed an Integra Type R to redline, they never forgot it. VTEC wasn't just an engineering solution, it was a feeling. Honda had figured out how to make an economy car feel alive. The Civic was the most reliable compact in America. The Accord was the benchmark midsize. The CR-V helped create the compact crossover segment. The S2000, a 2.0-liter engine making 240 horsepower, naturally aspirated, produced 120 horsepower per liter at a time when most sports cars couldn't break 80. It still holds records. Honda was untouchable. The philosophy was real. Man maximum, machine minimum. Give the driver the most space, the most usability, the most reliability possible, and waste nothing. That was the covenant Honda made with its buyers, and for a long time, they honored it completely. Something shifted. Not all at once. Gradually, the way these things always happen, Honda's leadership started asking different questions. The old questions were engineering questions. How do we make this engine rev higher? How do we reduce friction? How do we build a platform that lasts 300,000 miles without drama? The new questions were business questions. How do we grow volume? How do we enter new segments? How do we compete for buyers who want more features, more tech, more screen? On paper, those aren't bad questions. Every company asks them. But for Honda, the answers started leading them away from the thing that made them Honda. Take the turbocharged engines. Honda spent decades building naturally aspirated engines that were monuments to mechanical precision. The B-Series, the K-Series, the F-Series. These were engines that enthusiasts studied, tuned, and trusted. Then Honda shifted to small turbocharged 4 cylinders across most of the lineup. The 1.5-liter turbo in the Civic, the CR-V, the Accord, the 2.0-liter turbo in higher trims. Turbocharged engines are not automatically bad. Many brands build excellent turbocharged motors, but Honda's specific 1.5-liter turbo developed a problem that became impossible to ignore: oil dilution. In colder climates, under short-trip driving conditions, gasoline was getting into the engine oil, not a little. Enough to reduce lubrication, accelerate engine wear, and compromise the very reliability that Honda buyers were paying for. Honda acknowledged the issue. They updated software. They issued technical service bulletins. But owners in cold weather states, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Canada, kept reporting the same symptoms. The fix was incomplete. For a brand built on the idea that you could trust the engine completely, that was not a small thing. Then came the CVT, Honda's continuously variable transmissions. There's no mechanical gear changing, just a belt and pulley system that keeps the engine in its most efficient range. Fuel efficient? Yes. Smooth? Mostly. But ask any Honda mechanic about CVT longevity compared to Honda's old 5 and 6-speed automatic transmissions. The answer is not what Honda's reputation would lead you to expect. Reliability rankings started reflecting this. Consumer Reports, which used to list Honda models near the top of every segment, started bumping them down, not to the bottom. Honda is still not a bad car. But the gap between Honda and the competition got smaller, and the price gap didn't shrink to match. Then Honda made a bet, a massive, historic, company-defining bet on electric vehicles. In January 2025 at CES in Las Vegas, Honda unveiled the Zero Saloon and the Zero SUV. These looked like the future. 800-volt architecture, over 300 miles of range, up to 482 horsepower. Level 3 autonomous driving. A completely new operating system named after Honda's famous Ayasimo robot. Honda's CEO, Toshihiro Mibe, called it the anti-Tesla approach. Thin, light, and wise. Those were his exact words. The crowd lost their minds. The automotive press lost their minds. Honda had committed 10 trillion yen, that's $64 billion, through fiscal 2031 to make this work. They signed a battery joint venture with LG Energy Solution. They spent over $1 billion retooling factories in Ohio. They were building a $15 billion EV supply chain in Ontario, Canada. Honda was not dabbling. Honda was all in. 14 months later, it was all dead. The Zero SUV, cancelled. The Zero Saloon, cancelled. The Acura RSX, cancelled. Not a single one of these vehicles would ever reach a paying customer. Honda revised its operating profit forecast from positive 550 billion yen to a projected loss of between 270 and 570 billion yen. Their first automotive operating loss in 69 years. Senior executives forfeited a portion of their compensation. Honda stock dropped 8% in a single day. And here's the part that really stings. This was not a surprise. Honda had been building, selling, and killing EVs since 1997. The Honda EV Plus, 325 units, lease only, most of them eventually destroyed. The Fit EV, capped at 1,100 units, 7 states, gone. The Clarity Electric, lease only in California and Oregon. The Honda E in Europe, discontinued after 4 years and roughly 12,000 total sales. Every single one, a compliance car built to satisfy regulations, not customers. Even Honda's most successful EV, the Prologue, which sold 33,000 units in 2024, wasn't really Honda's car. It ran on a GM Ultium platform built at a GM plant in Mexico. When the federal EV tax credit expired, Prologue sales fell 65% in 1 quarter. Honda had to cut prices by $7,500 just to clear inventory. The executive who told Bloomberg the affordable EV partnership with GM was difficult as a business said it in October 2023. Honda had already known, but they kept going. And when the regulatory floor got yanked out, the federal tax credit gone, the California emissions mandates revoked, the whole business case collapsed. Honda didn't blow up the EV market. The EV market blew up Honda. So where does that leave the 2026 Honda lineup? Let's be honest about it, because Honda still makes some genuinely good cars. The question is whether those cars are worth the money Honda is asking for them. The Civic is still one of the best compact cars you can buy. The platform is solid. The interior quality improved dramatically with the current generation. The hatchback version in particular is genuinely excellent to drive. If you can get a good deal on a Civic, it's still one of the smarter choices in the segment. But here's the problem. Honda knows the Civic has a strong reputation, and dealers use that reputation to hold price. You're paying for the badge as much as the car. The Accord is still one of the best mid-size sedans in America. The 1.5-liter turbo in the base trim is the one I'd steer you away from in cold climates. But the 2.0-liter turbo in the sport and touring trims, that's a proper engine in a properly comfortable, well-built package. The Accord earns its price more than almost anything else in the Honda lineup right now. The CR-V is where things get complicated. The CR-V is Honda's volume machine. It sells more than anything else they make, and because it sells so well, Honda knows they can price it high, and dealers know they can hold close to MSRP. The 1.5-liter turbo oil dilution issue affected the CR-V significantly. The hybrid variant doesn't have the same problem and actually gets excellent fuel economy. But a CR-V hybrid is pushing $40,000 now, And at $40,000, you're shopping against the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid, the Mazda CX-50, and the Hyundai Tucson Hybrid, all of which offers serious competition. The Pilot, 3-row SUV territory, reliable platform, good V6 engine in previous generations. The current generation switched to a turbocharged 4-cylinder for most trims, and owners are divided. It's capable. It's not the machine that made the Pilot's reputation. The HR-V is a tough sell. Small crossover, 1.5-liter naturally aspirated, no turbo, no hybrid option. It's basic transportation at a premium Honda price. The Hyundai Kona and Mazda CX-30 are simply more interesting, better-equipped vehicles at the same money. And then there's Acura, Honda's luxury brand. Acura used to be a genuine alternative to entry-level European luxury, but Acura today is Honda with a different badge and a higher sticker. The ZDX, their EV flagship, lasted 18 months and ended production in September 2025. The TLX is a competent sedan, but when the average buyer walks into an Acura dealership and then walks into a Genesis dealership, the choice gets complicated very fast.